Welcome to another episode of Relatively Famous, the podcast where I, Chip White, interviewed relatives of famous people. You may ask what qualifies me? Vanna White of Wheel of Fortune is my sister, therefore relatively famous. Today, my guest is, to be honest, probably not as famous as some of my guests. If you're a true hard baseball fan, you may know who he is. He was drafted by the New York Yankees in the 90s. His name is Dennis Burbank, but I have his daughter Jordan Burbank on today.
Relatively Famous Podcast with Chip White.
Jordan, welcome to Relatively Famous.
Thanks for having me. It's super cool being able to come downtown here to the comic shop and be able to talk with you today.
Awesome. Yeah, we shoot our podcast at Nelco Comics in San Antonio. It is actually an active comic book shop. They're open today, so people may come in and out. It's kind of a little speakeasy comic book store. Crazy thing is, we just talked about this earlier, the 6 degrees of separation.
Yep.
We were at a party, mentioned the podcast. You said, "Oh, my dad played for the Yankees." And I'm like, let's chat. Next thing, because he's not super well known, but the family story, I was hooked. I wanted to hear your story. Tell me a little bit about your dad, and probably let you just kind of ramble about your family. But let's start with kind of a little bit of history of your dad so people can have an idea.
For sure. So my dad's Dennis Burbank. He is originally from LA, grew up in Southern California. Whole family's from there. A lot of times I like to joke when I say like, "Oh, Burbank," and they're like, "Yeah, how do you spell it?" I'm like, "Oh, like California. That's where all the Burbanks are from, duh." Started out at Pepperdine. So grew up, played ball, decided, hey, I'm going to go to Pepperdine. Going to stay in California because he's the total, when you think of California people, that's my dad, big time. Thinks he's the guy. So played at Pepperdine, was an All-American in both basketball and baseball. And then eventually transferred to Oklahoma State. Both of his coaches left, so came to Oklahoma State. And then played under Tom Holliday, where then he became the next starting right-handed pitcher. Played ball, also baseball and basketball at Oklahoma State, and then was the last pitcher to take him to the College World Series final, where they lost 2-1 against Georgia. So in spite of that, we only own English Bulldogs, just to forever put them in Oklahoma State jerseys as a joke.
That's funny.
And then got drafted. He wanted to finish and get a degree, and so waited and got drafted again. A total of 3 times he got drafted. Right out of high school, then when he was going to leave Pepperdine, and then finally again when he graduated with his degree, and that's when he said, "Yep, I'll go ahead and go pro now." And played pro for a little bit, stayed in professional sports after as a vice president for a couple different sports orgs, and ended up becoming a financial advisor in Oklahoma.
Okay. Now, he didn't really make the New York Yankees, but he played with the Yankees, and he played with some pretty famous Yankee players.
Yes,
right?
yes. So he played with Andy Pettitte, Derek Jeter, 2 of his super close friends, to where it always was kind of surreal when I thought, "No, you didn't. You don't know these people." And he'd bust out photos, and then one time he actually called up Andy Pettitte and trying to prove to me, like, "Yeah, this is my friend." And I'm like, "This is a fake phone call. Like, what is this? What is going on?" And he knows them all, and it really was really cool to see how close of a community, especially the baseball community, is, and that they're all still really good friends to this day.
Yeah. Well, now your dad, 6'6", you're very athletic. Your mom, let's just kind of, put your dad aside.
Yep.
Family story really quick, because you're a very athletic family. Kind of run through that history for me. This is kind of what fascinated me. Then we're going to talk about what your dad said to you.
Cool. So my mom is the 4-year starting shortstop from OU, which they just, again, won their 4th repeat national championship. Unfortunately, though, mom didn't get one, but she's super close with Patty. So we kind of joke around with mom that I have a championship ring, dad has a championship ring, but
Hold that
mom
up
never
again.
gone. Oh. Show it over here.
There you go.
Yeah, 2020. And so we always joke around that me and Dad have our championship rings, and Mom has her cute little O ring, but she's still super, super involved with OU. Loves Coach Patty, and they're always randomly at my house, the entire teams, all the time, whether it's Oklahoma State or OU, and they're still very, very involved in the softball world. So Mom loved playing, and that was kind of before pro softball really hit it off. And so once she was done, she finished. And so we always joke around when my mom and dad finally got together too, because if you have big sports fans, OU and OSU are big time rivals, and it's called Bedlam. And Mom and Dad actually met at a Bedlam game. So it was really ironic. And so they made baseball cards for their wedding invitations.
Oh, that's cool.
Where it was divided down the middle, a house divided.
Oh, yeah.
And so then everyone, though, joked once I came along that before I was even out of the womb, I was going to be a Division I athlete somewhere doing something. And so I ended up becoming a Division I athlete.
Cool. Your brother, because
Yes.
he's 6'6" also, or 6'8" or something. So
Yep. So my brother Drew, he's also a giant. Plays zero sports, has no interest, and he's like the perfect built athlete to where it makes me jealous that I'm like, I'm only 5'10", and on a good day I'm 5'11" in my cleats, and he's a solid 6'6", 6'7", and he does esports. He played every single sport you can imagine, from the big ones: football, baseball, soccer, basketball, golf, and then like archery and rowing. Not a competitive bone in his body, but let me tell you, he's got some magic thumbs. He is a solid esport player. If you go look out for his Twitch, Dat Guy Unknown, big time Twitch guy, and so he loves it. That's what he loves.
Hey, people are making a ton of money at it now.
I know. Well, now it's going to be supposedly, allegedly. I've heard it could be included in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what is happening? That's
us.
wild.
Please help us. So you played soccer. Kind of run through your athletic history real quick.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of have a funny joke about the whole soccer thing, because clearly both my parents played baseball, basketball, and softball. So growing up, I played all three religiously. So I was on every travel team of the top level for softball, basketball, and soccer. And then once I got to high school, I was one of the first freshmen to be on the varsity team for all three sports. And it was horrible. My schedule was horrible because I was also still playing the club sports at the same time. So I really was on like six teams. But with soccer, I had to decide early, around 5th grade, to like, that's going to be the one I go to college for, because in women's sports, you have to, for soccer and typically softball too, if you don't commit by your 8th grade freshman and at the latest beginning sophomore year, you don't go D1. So I played my whole childhood growing up, and by the end of my freshman year, I committed to University of Utah because I wanted to play in the Pac-12 really bad. Mm-hmm. And then eventually decided, I think I want to stay in the South, because I don't know if you know this, but it snows during soccer season.
It does, especially in Utah.
Yeah, and in 8th grade, that didn't really occur to me. I just thought I really loved snowboarding on the weekend. Mm-hmm. And then once I figured it out.
But you would be playing on the weekend, so you couldn't snowboard.
Yeah, but see, I could figure it out. I'd figure it out. Squish it somewhere in the schedule, right? But decided I'm going to look somewhere else, and so decommitted, and actually got a call from A&M, and then ended up going to A&M. I've loved it. I've drank the Kool-Aid. But I actually had no idea about A&M, though, before I even set foot on campus. Until I got there, I just knew they offered me a scholarship, and I'd look pretty good in maroon, and that was the only knowledge I knew about A&M.
And it's SEC, baby.
Oh, yeah. It just means more.
Yeah.
It just means more.
It does. I love to snowboard, too, by the way. I'm not a good skier. I'm fairly athletic, or I used to be. I didn't play football because it hurt. Yeah. I was a surfer. It's like, this is a lot more fun. So I just picked up snowboarding, and I still love that.
Yeah.
When you started getting really into sports, and your brother was obviously very athletic, what was it your dad said to you guys?
Oh my gosh. So I was telling Chip about this the other day, and this is what like brought it all up. So we had like a come to Jesus meeting with my dad one day, and where basically my dad very kindly, like I just need to know too, this was very kindly, but made sure to remind us that we'll never be as good as him. He's on a different level. It's kind of where that Californianess comes back out again, right? Like, you're just not going to be like me. And Drew, my brother, just was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I'll go play esports. And I was like, oh, game on. Like, this is the chance. And so then that's when, like, it just took me to another level of I got to one-up him. And it was so fun, though, because, like, it really opened my eyes of, like, oh, he is a big deal. Like, he's a big deal. And now I have to follow up behind that. And I kind of did. I got my championship, but it was fun. It's all fun and games until Dad says you can never be as good as him, huh?
Well, I'm sure he's super proud of all that you've achieved.
Yeah.
And what do you do now? Let's kind of talk a little bit about what's life like now.
So I just graduated again, like in 2023, moved down to San Antonio, and I'm an athletic fundraiser. So I work for the university down here, Texas A&M San Antonio. Kind of stayed within the Aggie system, but branched out still all the same. And I help fundraise both for the university and really heavily for the athletic side of things. So I'm helping develop this brand new athletic program that's only 4 years old and kind of helping the AD build it from the ground up, this building of a society and a foundation, just a place where more athletes can come and figure out who they are and keep playing the sport they love.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people don't, even San Antonians don't realize that Texas A&M San Antonio is down south, and it is a beautiful campus.
Yeah.
You guys have like an opportunity to grow because you have 700 acres to grow on.
Yeah.
And this athletic program is just starting. What are some of the sports that they're starting to get, and what is the goal you hope to help them achieve?
Yeah. So I'll start with how many sports we have and who we have. So right now we have men and women's soccer, men's golf, softball. And then we just got men and women's basketball, which will be starting this fall, which we're super, super excited about. Probably one of my biggest goals is helping like the surrounding area know more about the opportunity. Because you're right, like it's totally hidden and it's a really beautiful campus. I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to see a lot of campuses, and it still surprises me every time when I come on, like this is in the south side of San Antonio. No one knows it's here yet. Like it's such a little oasis down there. But probably one of my biggest goals is to just help create an environment where like at A&M, Aggies help Aggies, but Jaguars help Jaguars, and the chance to give back and create more opportunities for athletes and students and give people the chance to walk away with a degree, but still just a time that they remember having so much fun playing the sport they love before they go into the real world.
And now you're married.
Yes.
What's it like for your husband when you guys go home? I'm sure it's a little competitive at home. Maybe not with your brother, but everybody else.
So it's so funny because he is like Drew. He is competitive, but not at the level of my mom and dad and me. And so he has to like really assert himself into being kind of in the picture. But it's really great because at least he's tall. So he is also 6'6". That was a criteria. So at least like when we take family photos, it's all across, right? But he definitely.
You should have married a jockey just to really freak him out.
Just to mess up the system, right? I should have, or a wrestler, just
Yeah.
a little dinky guy. No, but like he comes into it, and the good news with him though, not that it would be bad if he didn't, but he played club baseball his whole life growing up, so he has that middle ground. He just didn't play in college. He's a good old-fashioned NARP, as we like to call them.
My son was very athletic in high school. He football, lacrosse. We did the lacrosse summer leagues and played baseball when he was little. And I remember when he was little, he said, "I'm going to play lacrosse and not baseball." I'm thinking, dude, now that you're professional, $20 million a year, $500 a game,
Yeah.
$20 million a year, come on. You're a pretty good first baseman and catcher. But when it came to college, he's like, it's like I'm not D1. I don't want to play for a school smaller than my high school.
Yeah.
And so he went to SEC school for the football and sports experience just to have fun.
I love it.
And so let me let me think of what. I know you got some stories you want to tell. What is Christmas like for your family? For you, and because you're here, they're where? They're in
Oklahoma.
Okay.
So a lot of it still is, I like to go back to Oklahoma because it just literally is, it almost sounds terrible saying this, but it's a competition, like every chance you get. And so like Christmas is like, okay, who can get, like between me and Drew, who can get the most presents for mom? And then dad gets in the mix, who can get the most presents for Drew? And so now Logan's been thrown into this and he's like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I didn't know this was a competition to even, like, who has the biggest stocking. And I'm like, sorry, like, you kind of got to own it. And so even right now, the next phase, which you'll love this, is we've gotten really big into surfing. So they just got a lake house, and they've picked up surfing, which, like, I've surfed normally at a beach, but now we're doing it from the back of a boat, which has been different, but I love it. And it's a competition every time. So my dad will see who can do the most tricks across the wake and back.
Yeah.
My mom likes to see who can catch the most bottles and shotgun them. And I'm sitting there just trying to hold on to the rope just to get up. And poor Logan can't even get up. He finally just got up. He finally made it. But he's like a baby giraffe getting up on a surfboard. Just legs all wiggling. And my mom and dad just are like, you can do better. Stop sucking. Stop embarrassing us. And I'm like, it's okay. Everything's okay. But then I get right in the mix, and I'm the worst. I tell people all the time, I'm like, oh, we can't bring you out here if you can't get up on a surfboard now. Like, this is embarrassing.
Go for a longboard. Get a longboard and make the competition cross stepping.
Yeah.
Hanging 5. Hanging 10 is going to be tough, but because the short ones are fun, like I said, the wake and stuff. But get a longboard and really put some soul into it. That'll freak them out.
All right.
Show up with a longboard and go, we're soul surfing, baby.
You chums, watch this.
What does your dad do now?
Yeah, so now he actually is a financial advisor. So he works predominantly with pro athletes, college coaches, professional coaches, still super in the sports world. It's been really cool to watch him because growing up, I moved around a ton. And he was a vice president for many different pro teams. We lived in Frisco, and he worked with the Rough Riders. Then we ended up moving, because it's kind of funny too, I have to associate where I lived at the time with what sports team was there. So we were with the Rough Riders in Frisco, then we moved back to OKC when the Hornets were still there, and then went to the Hornets games all the time. Then ended up in Miami, Florida, where he worked with the Heat. So he's really close with Coach Spoelstra. And then ended up coming back to OKC in 2008 when the Thunder first arrived. Mm-hmm. And so he helped the Thunder, and then decided, him and mom kind of sat down and were like, okay, no more moving. This is a lot. Let's stick it out here. And then one of his former teammates, they both decided to start practice together.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oklahoma City's cool. I've driven through a couple times and stopped. Bricktown, where the stadium, the baseball stadium and stuff, is really cool. And they have painted buffaloes, right?
Yes.
All
they're
over
everywhere.
Yeah.
I just took my friends up there for 4th of July, and they saw the buffaloes everywhere as we were driving through. And so it was fun having to explain to them, like, well, like, buffaloes are a really big deal in Oklahoma. They're on the plains, and people like to, and I have to remember it right, if it's like someone buys the buffalo, like a business, or if someone donates the buffalo, kind of a thing. And then they paint them, and then they set them up everywhere. Yeah. And so sometimes you're just driving through and see like a random like buffalo statue by a Brahms, and you're like, that's cool, that's different. And then you keep going, and you see another one, and you're like, all right, this is different.
Like Nashville does guitars.
Yep. I think Memphis does tigers, if I remember too. I think they do something.
They do something, not Denton, but somewhere up near in North Texas. They do horses.
Yep. So I was just about to say that. Like somewhere, I was almost going to say Denton too, but I remember seeing horses one time.
I think it's Denton, maybe. Yeah. Anyway, here's a question that, this is for your dad. He emailed me. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like, he did?
No, I'm just kidding. Is there going to be a grandkids competition soon between you and your brother?
I hope not. Let me phrase that. Yeah. It'll be a while for sure, but I'm positive once we get there, there will definitely be a competition. And I'm positive, too, they will make them be athletes. Since they missed out on him, they'll be like, hey, little grand person.
So is your brother married yet?
No.
Oh, so you got the jump on him.
I know. Trust me. Let's let him shake it up a little bit. He can do it first. He has a little girlfriend right now, and so I'm sure they're hoping we do it first, but who knows? Shake it up.
Hey.
Make things interesting.
So what's life in San Antonio like for you?
It's been fun. It's never dull here, I've learned. There's always something going on. I live out in Castroville, which is on the west side of San Antonio. It's known as the Little Alsace of Texas. And so my husband, Logan, he's a Haiti, which was the people who came from Alsace, France, that settled the town. And so until he met me, his whole family came straight from France, never left, stayed in the same town forever. So it's weird. He's the same generation as my mom, but he's my age, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
With kids-wise. And so he'd never been north of Dallas till he met me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Get that boy traveling.
So in our first 3 months, I took him to 6 different states. I was like, if you're going to stay with me, you need to know I don't stay still. Like, we go and we just travel. And so I would, randomly call him and be like, hey, I'm coming to pick you up. We're going somewhere. I just would take him driving around. And so then it didn't help either that my dad also has a plane. So he flies. And I would call my dad and just say, you guys doing anything this weekend? You want to pick us up and take us over to Branson? You want to take us up? And they're actually in Boston right now. And they're flying down to Kentucky because they want to do the bourbon tour before they come back.
Okay.
And so I would just be like, if you guys are going somewhere this weekend, come pick us up and we'll go where you go. And we do that all the time.
Are they just hanging out? Well, this will be long later aired, but are they just hanging out in Boston? Or?
So, yeah, they're hanging out. They actually went back to Cape Cod to see where Dad used to play, and then went and watched a Red Sox game.
Cool. I spent 10 months in Boston doing a TV show in the 2005, I think it was. Yeah. Great place to visit. Sorry, Boston, I have no desire to retire there, but it's awesome to visit the history and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're getting kind of close to, I'll try to keep this about 30 minutes, but I do like to end on one question. What did I not ask, or what do you really want to get out there and share?
Man. I mean, I just think the athlete world is so cool. It's such a small, we kind of joked about it earlier, and we've even joked about it now, but the 6 degrees of separation. Once you're in the athletic world, you kind of get to know a little bit of everyone. And so I've been super fortunate enough, growing up with my mom and dad, who both were very involved still, even to this day. Clearly they're out seeing everybody that they knew that they played with out in the East Coast. It's such a tight-knit community. And so if you get the opportunity to play college sports or go on and play pro sports, you just never know who you're going to meet and the impacts you can make playing it. And so it's just a really, really cool environment to be in and grow up in.
Cool. Yep. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up for the day.
Awesome.
It's been amazing. I love your family story. I love the competitiveness. I love the fact that you and your dad kind of rubbed the rings in.
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys rub the rings into your mom, what is her comeback for you guys? Well, I have and you don't. So
my mom has 2 of the biggest posters I've ever seen of my life of her doing College World Series. She played in the College World Series, and so she has her own individual College World Series championship posters where it's her diving all across the field, flat out Superman diving, and then another one where she was the program player of the year. And so she has them hanging up. Me and my dad have my jerseys, and she has her jersey, her Letterman's jacket, her 2 big posters, and we're like, oh. Okay. She's like, well, I guess you guys weren't pretty enough to be a poster girl. And I'm like, it's a little stab in the chest, Mom. That's a little rude. She's like, how's that ring feel now? So she's got her posters. She's pretty happy about that. Oh, that's awesome. Well, Jordan, thanks for coming in today. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun. I did not play sports in that level at all, but it's so much fun to hear about it. Yeah, thank you so much for having me again. Truly, this was a blast. So thank you. Oh, wait, before we go, we didn't talk about, sorry guys,
We didn't talk about what was a dream that happened for you in Nashville. And by the way, Bobby, you can always have me as a guest too.
Yeah.
What
Bobby.
happened in Nashville?
So, Bobby, if you're listening, love you. Lunchbox, love you. So, I always was my dream growing up I kind of wanted to do what you do. I liked the idea of being a radio personality and listen to Bobby Bones literally when I moved to Oklahoma forever. And I always wanted to either be Morgan number 1 or Morgan number 2. And so it just so happened that Amy's a former Aggie. And so my team went up in like 2019 up to Nashville to play Vanderbilt. And I just for funsies DM'd Lunchbox and Amy from the Bobby Bones Show and got to hop on a podcast with them. And so it was super cool. It's called Sore Losers Podcast. I think they still do it. I'm not sure. But got to go in studio and hang out with all of them and was such a cool experience. And so if you ever want me back, I'm down in San Antonio. Bring Chip. We'll do it together. And
Absolutely.
It was so cool. So I loved it.
That's awesome. It's 6 degrees separation. My producer also built Bobby Bones' podcast studio. So
It's such a small
world. I always tell people you're 6 people away from anyone you want to meet. All you have to do is ask. What is it? Who is it you want to meet and why? And if they don't know them, they know someone who knows someone who knows. And before you know it, you may have a contact for them. Anyway, Thank you again. And appreciate you being on Relatively Famous.
For sure. Thank you.
I'm so happy that Jordan Burbank was with us today. That was fun. Like I said, Google our dad. I always tell everybody, Google our guest relative. It's always fun. I want to thank Jordan. I want to thank our host, Nelco Comics here in San Antonio for the beautiful studio and location. I want to thank our partners, Nelco Media, for otherwise I'd be home twiddling my thumbs thinking, God, I wish I had a podcast. And I want to thank you, the listener and the viewer. I'm truly humbled that you will spend your 30, 40 minutes with us over and over and over again. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Please like, please comment, please share. Tell all your friends, your family, strangers about this crazy podcast called Relatively Famous. And if you're famous or related to someone famous, I'm constantly looking for guests. Reach out to us. If you know someone famous or relatively famous, reach out to us. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
You've been listening to Relatively Famous with Chip White. Please like and subscribe to Relatively Famous with Chip White.